Hi, this is Ron Gannett here at Community Church in beautiful Saddlebrook, Arizona. During these days of national crisis, we're looking at what we call a suffering sampler, reasons why Christians go through tough times. Today we're coming to number 5, and I'd like to call it personal choices or personal sin. Sometimes we suffer because of the sinful things that we do. Now, I need to give you a word of caution before I begin. A lot of our suffering is just really from the curse of the world. If you look at the curse upon the world, you realize that we have cancers, we have heart disease, we have difficult people and hurtful people, we have drunk drivers, not because God created them or not because we did anything wrong, but because that's just part of the curse upon the world. But sometimes we suffer because of the personal choices that are sinful that we make. The Bible talks in the New Testament about people like Ananias and Sapphira who lied to the church, who lied to the Holy Spirit about their stewardship, their giving. And God in those founding days took stuff like that very seriously. And those people died as an example to the congregation. Or if you jump over to 1 Corinthians chapter 11, there in the early church, they have the agape meal, the Lord's table with a festival. And as they were eating and together, sometimes they would put poor people or push others aside and take the best for themselves. And God said, "You're abusing my table." And that's why some of you are sick and some of you have even died. If you jump to the Old Testament, David and Bathsheba, look at the consequences of his sin. Not only did the baby die, but just imagine what it did to his marriage. Imagine it divided his family. His son Absalom tried to take the kingdom from him, and it even divided the whole country. Suffering comes because of the choices, sinful choices that we make. But the one that stands out to me today is in Numbers chapter 20, where Moses has the children of Israel in Kadesh, and they are thirsty. They have no water. And he pleads with God, "What am I to do for these people?" And God says, "I want you to go out there and I want you to speak to the rock. And when you speak to the rock, I'll bring forth water out of a rock." Well, Moses went out, and instead of speaking to the rock, he took a staff and he struck the rock twice. And God turned to Moses and said, "Moses, you just dishonored me. You took the glory that belonged to God and you gave it to yourself. You did not trust me to do what I was going to do. And because of that, you will not enter the promised land. The people will, but you will not." And if you remember the story, Moses went up to the mountain, saw the promised land, and there he died. And they went in without Moses. Our personal choices, especially our sinful choices, have consequences on others, but they also bring God's punishment and God's judgment and cleansing upon us. Not everything that we suffer is from God. Most of it comes from ourselves. But my friends, we need to be wise to realize that God takes sin seriously. And even though His grace is great, sometimes He wants to help us to see the error of our way and to cleanse us from our unrighteous ways. I remember a friend of mine who was known for being angry. One time in his anger, he took his fist and he pounded against the desk, not realizing there was a glass object there. Well, that glass object bit into his hand and cut him and damaged his hand severely. Years later, I said, "How's your hand doing?" He said, he says, "It'll never be 100%. And I thought every day that's a reminder of the damage that personal sin can have upon our lives. And every time his hand is weak, it should remind him of his sin before God. I remember when we were painting a house to move to another ministry, I was in the bedroom and I saw this footprint, the outline of a slipper on the doorpost of our closet. And I realized that years ago, I was in my anger, I slapped that slipper in my anger against the door, and I left the footprint there to remind me not to be angry like that. And my friends, sin has consequences. And maybe only you can be the one that searches the depths of your heart to ask yourself, God, am I clean before you? Am I clean before others? What do I need to confess to make things right? Oh, my friends, His grace is greater than our sin, and I pray that He will help you to cleanse yourself so that you can remove yourself from that suffering that goes on.